Ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to all of you all tonight, or I should say afternoon, because many of the CMA functions actually kick off in the evening. So I'm used to saying good evening, but good afternoon to everybody and a warm welcome to the Calcutta Management Summit, and of course, CMA being the pillar behind it. A little bit about CMA, ladies and gentlemen. Calcutta Management Association was instituted in 1957. Following the recommendations of a committee constituted by the All India Council of Technical Education. This committee advocated setting up of a regional management association in major cities of the country. CMA was formed as the first institution of its kind in the country under the aegis of the Union Ministry of Education. CMA was the prime force behind the formation of the All India Management Association, which we all know as IMA, the apex body of the management education in India. Ladies and gentlemen, before we begin this amazing afternoon, which is of course going to go into an evening, I would like to call on Mr. G.M. Kapur, President of the Calcutta Management Association, to kindly give the welcome remarks.
And a very good afternoon to everyone. A very warm welcome to all of you, and especially to Mr. Koushik Chatterjee, who has taken the trouble to come all the way from Mumbai to be here. It gives me great pleasure to have all of you at this seminar, where we gather to explore a topic that is not just timely, but transformative. The manager of tomorrow, strategies, skills, and evolution. The corporate landscape is undergoing an unprecedented evolution. Artificial intelligence, once a concept confined to science fiction, is now a critical force shaping industries, redefining roles, and challenging traditional ways of thinking. As we sit at the crossroads of this digital revolution, the role of managers is being reimagined. I was told that this subject has been done to death, but I totally disagree since we are nowhere near the upper limits of this learning. Every day is a new day. The speed at which generative AI is growing is phenomenal. Today's discussion centers on questions that are vital for the future of business. How will AI redefine decision-making, strategy, and leadership? What skills and qualities will a manager need to thrive in an AI-driven workplace? Can human ingenuity and AI collaborate harmoniously, or is there risk of displacement? These are not just theoretical questions. They are realities that demand immediate attention. The manager of tomorrow will need to master not only technology, but also the art of empathy, adaptability, and creative problem solving, qualities that AI alone cannot replicate. AI can bring about unimaginable change in various domains. Just to give an example, disruption in Hollywood or Bollywood. James Cameron, the well-known filmmaker with Titanic, Avatar, and Terminator under his belt, has joined the board of Stability AI. Their CEO, Prem Akkaraju, speaks about his association during the making of Avatar 2, where certain shots took 6,000 to 7,000 hours of computer time to render. Today, this can be generated in minutes. In fact, in the next 5 to 10 years, vast majority of film, TV, and visual media as we know it today is not going to be rendered but generated. I'm not familiar with the IP rules in this regard, but it may be possible to see a movie with Madhubala and Dilip Kumar in the lead roles. New creativity is bound to emerge: healthcare, creation of proteins, scientific research, visual intelligence, work productivity, the list is endless. We are fortunate to have with us our keynote speaker, Mr. Koushik Chatterjee, our esteemed panelists, and Professor Anup Sinha, who will deliver the concluding remarks. They bring a wealth of knowledge and experience to this conversation. Their insights will help us navigate this complex yet exciting frontier, providing us with a roadmap for balancing innovation with human-centric leadership. I encourage you to actively participate, ask questions, and challenge ideas because it is through this collective engagement that we can shape a future where both humans and machines thrive. Once again, thank you for being here. Let's embark on this journey together to understand and define the manager of tomorrow. Thank you, and let's get started.
Ladies and gentlemen, before we move ahead, we've got a small video. So I want everybody to put your eyes on the screen because this is a very interesting video on none other than, of course, Sir Jehangir Gandhi. Please see it out.
Sir Jehangir Gandhi, born on November 18th, 1896 at Bombay. Sir Jehangir Gandhi took his BA Honours in Physics and Chemistry from St. Xavier's College and Wilson's College, Bombay. He completed his postgraduate studies in Business Administration at Columbia University, New York, and in Metallurgical and Steelworks Engineering at the Carnegie Institute of Technology, Pittsburgh. In 1921, he joined the Tata Steel Works as a metallurgical engineer. His meteoric rise saw him being appointed General Manager in 1938. He was the first Indian to hold this position. As General Manager, he was instrumental in cutting down costs, eliminating waste, and steering the steel works successfully through the Great Depression of the 1930s. In 1945, he was appointed Director in charge of Tata Steel. A more significant recognition of his outstanding ability came in 1959 when he was appointed a Director of Tata Sons, the parent firm controlling the Tata Group of companies. He was also the Chairman of the Indian Tube Company and a Director of Indian Tin Plate Company of India Limited. Besides steel and engineering industries, Sir Gandhi's activities covered a wide-ranging field. Recognition of his professional ability and his broad vision as a technocrat came from both within and outside the country. He was called upon by the Government of India to help in the country's industrial and steel development plans. He was also involved in working out blueprints for the designing of modern management and technical education in the country. He was the chairman of the committee appointed by the government whose recommendation led to the foundation of both the Indian Institute of Technology and the Administrative Staff College, Hyderabad. Sir Jehangir Gandhi was the president of the Board of Governors of the Xavier Labour Relations Institute, Jamshedpur. In fact, it was he who conceived the idea of the institute and was deeply involved in its working in progress since it was set up in 1942. As Vice President of the Acharya Jagdish Bose Centenary Committee, he initiated in 1960 a scheme of Science Talent Search, now widely known as Jagdish Bose National Science Talent Search Scholarship. The Calcutta Management Association was founded under his leadership in 1957. In 1945, he was conferred the knighthood. He was awarded the Padma Bhushan in 1958 for his outstanding contribution towards the industrial development of India. In 1964, he was invited by Columbia University to accept at a special convocation the honorary degree of Doctor of Laws. Sir Jehangir, a leader, a visionary, and a technocrat extraordinary.
Ladies and gentlemen, now it's time to kick off the 23rd Sir Jehangir Gandhi Memorial Oration. But before we do that, I'd like to call on Mr. T V S Shenoy, Executive in Charge, Bearings Division, Tata Steel Ltd, and immediate former President CMA, to kindly introduce our keynote speaker. Mr. Shenoy.
Thank you, Jimmy, and good afternoon. Good afternoon, I said. CMA is known for a loud, robust good afternoon, and let me try once again. Good afternoon. Yeah, that's the way it is, and it's my pleasure and privilege to introduce Mr. Koushik Chatterjee to you. Mr. Koushik Chatterjee is the Executive Director and Chief Financial Officer and member of the board of Tata Steel Ltd. He's got over 30 years of experience with the Tata Group, and he completed his undergraduation from the University of Calcutta, and is a fellow member of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. Mr. Chatterjee joined Tata Steel in 1995 in Corporate Finance and Planning Group. In 1999, he was transferred to the Group Executive Office of Tata Sons, the parent company of Tata Group, where he worked with the Group Finance Director for 5 years in 2004. In August 2004, at the age of 36, Mr. Chatterjee assumed the role of the Chief Financial Officer of the company and designated as the Vice President Finance. Mr. Chatterjee was also appointed on the board of Tata Steel in November 2012 as a whole-time director with responsibility for finance function globally for Tata Steel. As the Chief Financial Officer of Tata Steel, he led the financial stewardship of the company, including many, many troubled times in M&A, financing strategy, balance sheet management, investor relationships, enterprise risk management, financial operations and control, sustainable finance, finance academy, and people development. Among his many milestone achievements, he has, over the years, led the transaction planning, structuring, and execution of the acquisitions of over $25 billion in India, Europe, Canada, Africa, and Thailand. Of course, in Singapore and Australia as well. He has led the financing program for the company for over $60 billion, including the refinancing and also financing strategy for the organic and inorganic growth. In 2016-2017, he led the complex multi-stakeholder negotiation with the consortium of trade union in UK, a not so easy aspect to deal with in multi-stakeholder negotiations, especially for the steel pension scheme. Mr. Chatterjee is on the board of Tata Steel Europe, and other Tata Steel Group companies. He's a trustee of the IFRS Foundation and also a member on the board of the World Steel Association of Brussels. Well, we all know the financial acumen of Mr. Chatterjee, and also the love for his cash flows, and of course, getting the best out of people. I have had a ringside view of it, but apart from this, he's a keen, he loves traveling and a keen eye on photography. Welcoming Mr. Chatterjee for the session.
Very good afternoon to all of you, and thank you, Shenoy, for that kind introduction. I would like to thank Mr. Kapur and the Calcutta Management Association for inviting me to speak on the 23rd Sir Jehangir Gandhi Oration. As we saw in the video, I'm truly humbled and honored by the invitation to speak at this occasion. The way I would like to progress my conversation or my talk this afternoon is first to give a context setting before I get into the subject in particular. In recent years, or in the recent era, if I may use the word, we've been living in spheres of outrages and outages. There is a significant amount of trust deficit in the society at this point of time. And we see this societal disruption in many spheres, and many times this city saw significant disruption a few months back, which continued for weeks and days. And that signifies the deficit that exists between the establishment, the society, the various stakeholders in the community. This year, out of 50 out of 64 nations that went for elections, the incumbents lost. And that kind of signifies the intent and the outrage that is within the societies towards people who are in power, people who have economic power, people who have social power, or even elected powers. And this does have a reflection on the rest of the stakeholders of the ecosystem in a society. The geopolitical dynamics, if you open the social media or the news, you would get a sense of the world in turmoil, whether it is wars in different zones, cold wars, trade wars, and military buildups happening all across the world, does build in a sense of the outages that are happening on supply chain, for example. We do have a significant amount of mass movements. It started with the Arab Spring some years back, but it has cascaded into various parts of geographies. And the economic stability is therefore in a state of disruption. If I look at the ways in which the recent elections in the US happened, and the reaction of the capital markets and the reaction of the political establishment across the globe, it is very clear that we are possibly looking at a threat of multilateralism. It is the trade blocs which are getting polarized. It is China bloc versus the US-led blocs. You've seen the threat of tariffs. While tariffs are not good for any economy for a long term, but tariffs are A, negotiating tactics to bring people to the table, and B, to demonstrate the nationalism and protectionism that happens across borders, especially in the form of trade flows, and also on people flows. The threat of deportation of mass-scale immigrants is also a reflection or a manifestation of that trend that we are seeing across the globe. We saw that in the UK. The elections were fought on immigration. We are seeing this in the US, and we are seeing this in multiple geographies, even in mainland Europe. Near home, we have a similar problem in our neighboring countries, and we are therefore looking at a very volatile state where people are not in a state of stable mindset to carry on their day-to-day jobs. This is also leading to a significant level of inequality. And inequality is actually the source of the societal disruption. And this is triggering into the entire ecosystem of stakeholders. So in that context, if I now talk about what's then the future of the corporation, where does the corporation lie? Because it's not on the fringes. A corporation is right inside the society. And therefore, a corporation effectively have to deal with the balance of the society, the balance of the stakeholders, the ecosystem, the expectation. I see this in many parts where I travel for work. A case in point is in Netherlands. We have a very large steel plant in Netherlands, and the air quality of the steel plant, around the steel plant, is the AQI is 5. And yet there is a uproar of the community saying it is polluting. So if I talk about what's happening in Delhi or Calcutta or my city in Bombay, to say that we are at 270 or 300, Delhi at 500 in winters, but that's the expectation. That's the expectation of the community in a corporation, that you have to actually undertake investment to make that 5 into 3 or to 0. Now, these are, when I came back to India and I told my colleagues in my company, and they said that's the typical Western way of looking things. But that's not going to be the case in the years to come, even in India. The younger generation, the stakeholders, are not going to be patient. They would have a demand. they would have an expectancy. So it's not a universal given that we can do as a corporation what we do, the community can fend for itself or fetch for itself. That only intensifies the trust deficit. And that is where a manager and the community of managers have a role, and I'll come to it. I was part of a British Academy global project, which was named as Future of the Corporation in a collaboration with the University of Oxford. And we had to distill what is the effectively the framework within a corporation works. And the first one comes out to be the purpose. So what is the purpose of a corporation? What does it serve? Is it just an economic engine? Does it just generate profits? Is it the only purpose of a corporation? In the 21st century, and as we are progressing through the 21st century, that's not going to last. That was okay in the early part of 19th century or over the last maybe 200 years of Wall Street capitalism. But it is not going to last. And you can figure out that if the societal purpose of being is not addressed by a corporation, it will not have a sustainable lifespan. And therefore, defining the corporation's purpose is critical in the context of regulation, in the context of society, the stakeholders. The world is moving out from the Wall Street shareholder as the only stakeholder to a larger ecosystem of shareholders. So a manager of tomorrow cannot just think of only the shareholder. It is to think about the non-financial stakeholders, be the community, be the regulator, be the government, be the larger society, the suppliers, the customers, and so on. And their interest, it's a balance of interest, and it's not just one-way interest. The second part of it, beyond purpose, after the company defined the purpose, I call it the 4 Ps: purpose, planet, profit, people. And that are the 4 foundations of any corporation. So if a manager is entering his or her career in any company and wants to build a professional career, can't be one lens of what am I told to do only in terms of generating profits for the company. Today, when we are looking at youngsters, there are many who question, what's your climate goal? This is not a question when at the end of an interview, you've kind of selected somebody and you ask, do you have anything to ask me? In our time when we got in, we were quiet. We thought, looks like the interview's gone off well. Today a youngster is saying, what are your sustainable goals? What are your climate goals? How much are you polluting? What's your biodiversity plan? So these are important issues because planet is important. The other day I was in Sikkim and I was traveling from Bagdogra to Gangtok, and you can actually see the extent of damage the flash floods have caused just maybe 11 months back. Because it's just that the global warming, the climate goals have been kind of farcically looked at by certain parts of the society, certain parts of the corporation, and not given enough importance when we are constructing, building roads, highways, when we are investing into high carbon emitting industries. And we realize that coming from a steel industry, which is a basic and a foundational material for the world, it is a hard to abate sector. But within that, we have to use the best technology. We have to invest in the best processes to ensure we have a pathway to reduce CO2 emissions in the future. And that's why our goals sometimes are higher and more tougher than the national goals and the NDCs. But that's the sign of how corporations have to be responsive in terms of maintaining their biodiversity, maintaining their climate goals. And without that, again, companies will not survive. In Europe, again, if I give the example, the moment carbon gets priced and costed, it's an economic cost. So if today, for example, the European Union emission trading scheme, the CO2 is about, say, 70 euros. So what was free earlier, in India it's still free. The moment it becomes 70, the decision making changes. The investment pattern changes. Whether to invest or not becomes important. So and this is the society which is putting pressure. In Europe it started early. In India we are still on the negotiating table, but we are just buying time. There will be a time when carbon will get priced, sooner than later. When it gets priced, the choice of technology, the choice of investment, the location of investment, what kind of strategies around climate goals will come into being. So planet is now part of the corporation. It is not outside the corporation. And as managers, we have to feel that. So we need to be alert, aware, and when we are taking judgments on investments, judgments on capital allocation, on judgments on technology, on markets, on products, we have to implicitly or explicitly take into account the impact on the planet. The purpose flows into profits. Earlier, it used to be the other way around. If I make profits, I can define a purpose. It doesn't work that way. It will not work that way in the future. So we need to ensure that we have the ability to define our strategy in a manner where we pursue our purpose, focus on the planet, profits will come. It may come in a manner where it is a fair balance of all the stakeholders. It will not come as one-sided. So the whole duopoly or monopoly or oligopoly conditions change, and therefore there is a rebalancing. And it just doesn't happen within a particular geography, it happens across geographies. And finally to people, because people make it happen. It is this consciousness of people, the managers, which will drive all of this, because these are inorganic stuff. So the organic being is the human being, and it's the human being who will drive, think, and move towards it. If I look at where we stand as a country, as India, I think we are today on the runway. We are gathering speed, but we have not crossed the V2 as airlines cross. When you cross the V2, you have to take off. We are still on the verge of takeoff if I look at holistically. GDP numbers are sometimes illusionary. You don't look at only GDP numbers. It is a holistic view of Human Development Index. It is the financial indicators, and what opportunities does it provide? And of course, India is in a fantastic position to grow on a multi-decadal path to become a developed country, not just again on GDPs, but effectively on ensuring that there is a certain amount of stability, prosperity, and happiness in the citizens of this country, which means a social balance, an economic balance, and an ecological balance that should exist within the country. So a manager of tomorrow is faced with a lot of things. The manager of today is also faced with a lot of challenges in front. One is the excitement of the future. So if there are any youngsters who are in their academics waiting to build a career, there is a huge amount of excitement for the future, because the future ahead, especially in India, is very significantly bright. Even if there is no triggers coming in from the establishment, India is in that cusp of takeoff. So that will certainly happen. India is a technology-friendly country. It is a country which has got good demographics. It has got the foundations. We just need to ensure that we maintain the stability of institutions, and India and its population, all of us as Indians, will certainly have the ability to drive growth in the future. But equally, there will be challenges of disruption. So if I'm a manager, I need to ensure that I understand that it's not a one-way ticket. There will be disruptions. And how do we actually frame our mental constitution to ensure that we can manage disruptions? So getting comfortable with uncertainty, ability to handle risk, convert the risks into opportunities. Some may convert, some may not convert, in which case we need to reduce the residual risks and ensure that we are able to deliver on the objectives that the corporations have. We have to bear the burden of stress. When you grow fast, you will be stressed. And today one of the biggest issues is the mental health of the working population. Sometimes it comes up, sometimes it doesn't. It's hidden. But you hear very often incidents which are, if you trace back, and mental health is unlike physical health. Today I go out into a chilly weather and I don't take protection, I'll get a cold. Mental health actually builds up based on circumstances, based on everyday experiences, based on small indicators and which kind of accumulates, and then there's a tipping point. And therefore, a manager of tomorrow has to have the ability to undertake what kind of stress works for him or her. The manager of tomorrow has to undertake the ways in which you can remedy yourself. And this is important because it's a long career. It's a long investment in whichever organization. Howsoever, many people leave organizations to go to another organization saying, I had stress. You go to that organization, after a few years, you'll have stress. That's not the solutions. Jumping organization is not the way to deal with stress. Because if everybody is on that race, you will have that stress. Key point is how to address that. And there, the self-leadership is an important element. If you have your own ability to lead yourself, your own ability to manage difficult situations, awkward conversations, challenging environments, you would have your own self-discipline. There's no magic switch which can be prescribed. It is what I can absorb, what I cannot absorb. What I aspire for, it's also a balance of aspiration and ambition. If I am aspiring to be reaching somewhere which is unusually high, I must be comfortable with the stress. Shenoy talked about the fact that I became a CFO of Tata Steel at the age of 36. I was not prepared, or neither I was made prepared for that role. It was given to me. I took it as a duty. The risk was taken by people who appointed me the CFO. I tell this even today. And my job was to make their decisions feel right. And so when I got the offer that you are being appointed, I actually went up to our then managing director and our chairman, and I said, why me? Because I was 36, my wife was just about 30, and my son was 2 years old. And I really didn't know because I was not prepared, neither was I made prepared for that role. But once that decision was made and they found something that I possibly could do, the onus was on me. And so when I go to B schools and people say like what Shenoy said, I said that's not very usual and that is not the most appropriate thing to do because your balance of life gets skewed very quickly. Because the amount of stress that you take, because you are an unprepared person. Earlier, people used to get onto these roles when they were well past 20, 25 years of their experience. So you suddenly get it in the 10th year of your experience, you are underprepared. But then comes the challenge of how do you prepare yourself, how do you balance all the priorities and ensure that between the work that you have and the life that you have, you find out a balance. I may be saying it as a prophetic word just now, but it was really challenging. I don't know whether I've succeeded, that my wife can say that. But the fact is, it is an eternal stress point to ensure that you can deliver to the needs of the organization, especially if that organization is growing or going through its own level of stress. It becomes important, therefore, the manager to look at himself or herself to say, what is my constituent? How do I handle each of these volatility, and how do I address them? And none of it can you do by alone. So there comes the ability to work with a team. If you have a good team, half the job is done. How do you know you can have a good team? You can have it only when you understand the people factor amongst the people who work with you. Selecting people is not about being loyal to you. It's about understanding the capacity and capability of those human beings who are also investing their careers in that organization. And how do you take them along? How do you ensure there is enough empathy, yet there is enough constructive stress to make things work? Because everything is not binary. Life is a nuanced approach towards how do you address every day. And the people who are good with managing ambiguity, uncertainty, converting opportunities into outcomes, and handling risks and stress are the ones who are best prepared. Whether they reach a certain position or not is an outcome. But the pathway of preparedness is very different. And you often don't get time to structure it because you're doing it as you are going in the path. There will be times when you will trip and fall, but have the ability and the courage to stand up and walk again. The other part is the ability to keep the value system in place. So while we are entering into a machine age, as Mr. Kapur rightly mentioned, if you read the literature on AI, you will realize that we are at the amoeba of the machine age. We are just now looking at fulfilling our poetry needs through ChatGPT. That's like at the basic level. Okay, if you look at the next 5 years, it will be a productivity tool. Most corporates today are saying we will adopt generative AI or AI essentially to make my work better. That's a productivity tool. The pace at which the digital intelligence is growing, it is just crossed the level of human computing. And therefore, while we may want the AI to stop at a certain level, the neural networks of AI will not stop at that level. And therefore, you would hear a lot of noise or a lot of conversations on responsible AI. Because the fact is that once it goes, today we are saying, what is my goal? The computing is focused on that goal. But AI will learn by itself. It's coded like that. We process 100 bytes per unit of time. AI processes trillion bytes per the same unit of time. It is not specialized, it doesn't know anything, but it learns at the speed of light. When Mr. Kapur talked about the Hollywood or Bollywood movies, no AI is structured like that, but you expose it, that's how the neural networks work. And therefore, over the next 5 to 20 years, we will see an exponential growth of the good part of AI and also the dangerous part of AI. We will see the dinosaurs coming out. Nobody, even the inventors and people who have worked on AI for a couple of decades, still don't know which direction it will go. And believe me, it can become pretty dangerous if AI infiltrates into, for example, the military systems. It might just decide on its own to know how it will program itself to even start wars. We don't know. And therefore, people are talking about kill switches. So it's that age where currently the manager has to look at what AI can give, what machine learning can provide. Today we are at the productive usage of AI. How can I compute faster? How can I model faster? How can the predictive analytics be faster? That's the current space. But the world of AI is not going to be limited at that level. We have created something. People are talking about a Geneva Convention on AI, that we need to control it and what is the protocol that will happen. The most powerful countries will be the people who will drive AI. So a manager sitting today in this room or in any office, when they become interested in AI, it is important to understand at what stage of learning the AI will provide the productive value. And it is important to be on top of it. And therefore, along with self-leadership comes self-learning. Gone are the days when everything will be through formal methods of teaching. It is through whatever I want to learn, I can today learn from various sources, open sources, across the universe. You can go into a Stanford site and look into a webinar of a few Nobel laureates in the subjects that you want. You can go into any university, any academic world, or even training centers and learn what you want to learn. So the self-learning is the most important element along with self-leadership that a manager of tomorrow, and in fact the manager of today, has to orient itself. And this is going to have a very significant element, and that is where the value systems will also get tested. You know, values are something that will always be at the back of mind of whatever you do. Because the social media, the artificial intelligence, and any digital intelligence applications can actually test your value system. And if we are not really focused on maintaining that and not getting derailed, it will certainly have very contrarian efforts to the objectives of any manager for the future. Therefore, one should look at the entire universe of a career, a profession, a corporate life, or any vocation for that matter, in actually looking at one's own internal rethinking and rewiring to ensure that there is a fit for purpose to the environment that exists outside us. It is important for us to be responsive, but also be responsible. Today, on an X handle, you can make any comment on anything and there's no bar. So you can be very responsive, but are we being responsible? That's a question for us to see as human beings. We are often very judgmental rather than actually exercise our judgment. So something happens and we are very judgmental and make an opinion, but we struggle to exercise our true judgment on decisions, whether it is in work or whether it's in life. And a manager of tomorrow has to train herself or himself to ensure that the judgment on decisions that she or he takes is appropriate to the cause that is put in front of them. Understanding the system thinking is important. What's good for the organization? This was a truth that existed even earlier. You saw the video. Sir Gandhi was somebody who actually built Tata Steel. If you go to Jamshedpur, you can actually feel, there's a center for excellence that we have, you will feel that the implementer of a vision was Sir Gandhi. It requires a lot of passion, it requires a lot of diligence, perseverance to build institutions. A manager of tomorrow, a successful manager of tomorrow is one who is focused on building institutions, not just his or her career. If you look at what is good for the organization, you will in some form or the other be doing good to yourself. The timings may not match, the proportionality may not match, but it is important to ensure that the institutional needs, the value-based institutional needs are addressed and is most appropriately dealt. I think it is important also to ensure that one is looking at a holistic view of life rather than just being a narrow view of life. I talked about people who keep leaving organization, maybe thinking in the right way. But if you are invested in an organization, a manager would be better served if they can look at how that organization has benefited and what's the mutuality or symbiosis that has happened through the time they have invested in the organization. It's not a one-way street. It's not that people work only for salary. As I said, you have to build institutions. Even if it's a fraction of a portion, it helps the institution. Finally, if I were to look at something which I carry with me because I got this from my late father, and during my professional journey, every time something good happened and if I shared with him, he used to say, but continue to be the good human being. Because without that, individuals don't prosper, and a collective of individuals within an institution doesn't help the institution to prosper. So if you're not good human being, if we don't have the empathy, if we don't have the ability to work with others, collaborative, because nothing can be achieved alone. It is always the team which can help in achieving a common purpose. And it goes back to that 4 Ps, the first P of the 4 P of purpose of the corporation. The future of the corporation lies in the collaboration of the people who have invested in that institution. And therefore that common purpose should always be something which is important for all of us as individuals in whatever we do, wherever we do. And the other point which is critical, which we are as a society not, when you listen to the TV talk shows, it is very apparent. We are not good listeners. We've given away our ability to listen. We only listen to reply. We are not listening to understand. And if you're not listening to understand, how would you leave your brains with a thought to shape the thought that the brain needs to process? And if you are not good listeners, I can tell you, AI will have the edge. Because he doesn't need to listen, he just need to process. Because we need to listen, we can process. That's how the human are wired. So I think we just have a responsibility as managers to also contribute to the society through our behaviors and kind of reverse these signs of decay that we see in the society across the world. As individuals, we have a role to play. We may not move the needle, but collectively it may move a significant way in which the future generations will look at us. And therefore, the manager of tomorrow has to be in sync with society, be in sync to the value systems that the society needs, especially in a disruptive world. And while there is no magic switch, it's a human journey. We can all take it together. Thank you very much.
Yes, Mr. Chatterjee, it was really enlightening, for us to understand. And I love that last portion of it. You have to be a human. It has to come from inside if you really, truly want to make a difference and want to be successful. And right now, I would like to call on Mr. Shenoy. We're going to have a Q&A with Mr. Chatterjee at the moment. And if Mr. Shenoy could kindly come on and we could answer a couple of questions which has been thrown on.
Thank you, Jimmy, and can we give a round of applause for one of the most valuable speeches ever? And Koushik sir, as I was reflecting on the last hour, I'm sure this is being recorded. It would have been a masterclass for many of those who are still stepping into the corporate world and also who are steeped into the corporate world. Koushik sir, I just got a few questions around the table, which I've got, but maybe I'll pick up a couple of them and start off this. You did mention about handling disruption, stress, and failures. You talked about the future of the corporation and the 4 Ps. We also heard a lot about the good human being. Maybe if you reflect back on your career, Koushik sir, you talked about self-leadership and ability to handle stress and failures at a younger age. We often talk about successes. So for all the people who have moved into the corporate world, fresh from engineering, fresh from college, and getting right into the corporates or into entrepreneurs, handling failure during these times, how they should go about it?
I don't think, actually one has to be very comfortable with failure. And I'll talk about it on a lighter note. My son, when he was in school, he used to generally be good in his studies. And you get those ranked 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And one day he asked me that while in school, what was your rank? Because I said next time you should do better. So I told him that, look, both your mother and I have never stood second. Your mother always stood first in university and I never reached second. So you can take your own pick, but I think it is important to not get disheartened by failures. I think if I may say that personally I have had many trips across my careers, but as I said, if your value systems are within yourselves are in the right place, if you are focused on a certain goal and an objective, it doesn't matter how many times you trip and fall. If you think you have been sincere in your attempt, maybe that attempt is not good enough, which can happen, but keep at it. And this keep at it is an important element, at least for me, and the adjunct area is to be patient. So if one is patient with anything that you do, even if it's an aspiration or an ambition, it is always something that levels out. And therefore, I think one of the key elements of a human behavior is to be comfortable with failure, learn from failure, but never get upset with failure. It's easy to say because every one of us, when we trip, we are disappointed. We are even disappointed when our country loses a cricket match. But it is important to keep that faith. And if you keep the faith and you internalize why potentially we have failed, at least to me, I don't mind telling myself sorry that you've not done well enough to cross the path or cross the bridge. And therefore, you continue to attempt your own ways of doing things. So I think it's important to be comfortable with failure, not be anxious about failure, because if you get anxious, then your mental makeup is not the same. So it's not that you should target to fail, but you should target to succeed. But if you don't succeed, have a controllable element of disappointment and move on.
When you did talk about failure, and there's a door of failure which opens, there's a door of success waiting down the line. And just connecting with cricket, you did mention about it, and you talked about teams, building teams. We just seen an IPL auction, and we have seen Pant go from maybe 2 years back of doldrums to getting 27 odd crores. And I pick up the point which you said, ability to invest on people and have constructive stress. And having a ringside view of how we operate, I must tell you all, getting the best out of people is not an easy task. You need leaders to do that, and Mr. Chatterjee has done that. So how do you go about getting the best out of people? Thin line between pushing them to the wall versus getting them over the wall versus getting the best out of them. It's often a challenge, but how do leaders should step into doing this?
So again, as a personal anecdote, when I moved from Jamshedpur to Tata Sons, I had the good fortune of working with Mr. Hussain, who was the Director of Finance of Tata Steel. He was my predecessor in Tata Steel, but then moved as a Group Finance Director in Tata Sons. And he picked me out from Jamshedpur, and I didn't know him. He just, I still don't know what is the basis on which he said, you come and work with me. In the early 2000s, we used to do a lot of strategic work, especially disinvestment programs, M&A, restructuring, new JVs. And I was not, again, trained to do that. I just started my career, in a manner speaking, maybe 5 years old. And he would typically push me to the deep end of the pool to say, you carry on. So I remember once when we were doing the Tata Sky joint venture, my counterpart whom I was negotiating with was James Murdoch, who was Rupert Murdoch's son. And I was this flunky who was on the negotiating table. And I came and told him, sir, how do I negotiate with him? He's kind of the owner's son. He said, doesn't matter. You have your brand, your visiting card. That's good enough. You just do your work. What do you think is right for the institution? And time again over those 6 years that I worked with him, I had the, I wouldn't say opportunity, I had the kind of circumstances where I was pushed there, and it was a self-learning exercise. And that's when I understood, and even today, I always look for people who are A, self-motivated, B, who can get into things which are unfamiliar to them, and C, have the ability to be honest in their inputs. If you have that, I think the best from the people will come out automatically. Because if we are all aligned on the same platform, I don't think, we are all professionals. We want to give our best and get the best outcome. That's the satisfaction you get. Your salary doesn't change month to end based on your outcomes, but the institution gets value out of it. So trusting people, having faith in people, and selecting the people who have the self-motivation is the best form of getting the best outcome.
On that note, on getting the best out of the people, we have questions which are around the corner. Are there? Yes. We have a few hands raised. If you could send the mics there. Yeah, please.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chatterjee. Very well crafted, well articulated message and learning for all of us. This is Saurav Sinha. I work in Tata Consultancy as a program director. I just have one pertinent query, especially in today's world. You touched upon self-leadership, self-learning, and also touched upon very prominently about the AI aspect, which the future manager has to be aligned and has to be has to adapt going for. There's another dimension also we are seeing day in, day out, which is also kind of burning in today's world. That is the net zero and energy transition, right? Unfortunately, a lot of places, it is a lot of work happening on the books, not in reality. Recent COP29 we had in Baku, and we have seen the situation of the attendance, participation, outcome, etc., etc. And most of the cases, people talk, even if the top leaderships talk of this is something to be done, but as soon as sunk cost, because it doesn't give immediate benefit. But at the same time, high risk is there. Especially AI also calls for a lot of energy, because those things like that we have NVIDIA, we are showing that light large kind of thing. They call energy hungry, AI also energy hungry. In that case, being a human value coming in the point, and being really responsible and responsive, how the future manager has to be equipped and address this energy transition demand and net zero demand, along with the AI demand, and how they should prepare themselves and communicate to their industry and society as a large. What is your view on that? Thank you.
It's a very good question. So I think the energy transition or the net zero transition started off as a buzzword, but it is taking shape in different pace across the world. As I said, when you start costing carbon, and that reflects in your outcome performance, you are bound to take action. So the geographies where carbon is priced, and one of the predominant geographies is Europe, people are taking action. China has started doing the same. In their own ETS program, they have started pricing carbon, though it's a market by itself. So once you start doing that, it is important. The question is for policymakers to figure out the transition in a manner where the societal balance is not affected. So that's why the word has come out as just transition, which is just to all the ecosystem players. I think as far as this transition is concerned, it has left the station. While people may say with the new president in the US coming in, it is going to reverse. But I doubt whether US companies themselves want to reverse or not. Yes, you might have the oil and gas companies getting a freedom to do more investment in oil and gas or any other high emitting sectors. But I feel that the climate goals are real and you can actually feel it. The reason why I gave the example of a recent visit to Sikkim is climate disasters are affecting us. 3 weeks back, I was also in Jodhpur, and normally by November, it becomes cold, and the temperature there was some 38 degrees. And the people there are saying, we are not used to this, because by this time, you normally have a significant amount of weather change. So the climate change is real, it's palpable, it's affecting. You ask any insurance company across the world, they'll tell you that the claim ratio, you look at the number of cyclones that are happening even in India. So I think it is important to recognize that climate change and climate goals have to be pursued. Investments have to be done. There are, and if I talk about high processing industry like data centers, etc., which takes in very high energy, I think there has to be a technology, whether it is renewable, etc., which has to invest. So there is a lot of investment happening today, but it's not at scale. It's still at pilot. So I think we are on borrowed time, and we need to move this needle fast.
Yeah. Good afternoon, sir. My name is Shaurabh Datta. I have started my career in Tata Steel. After spending around 2 decades, I have changed. And now I am taking care of one of the business vertical in IB Industries. So it's a wonderful session. Thanks a lot, sir. You have given us a good strategies and path for the future managers as well as the current managers as well. Sir, my question is very simple, that India leadership is actually poised to take the 3rd largest economy by 2030. So how do you feel our corporation or the overall ecosystem is actually equipped for the future managers or to deal with this challenge to become the 3rd largest economy by 2030, because only 6 years from now?
So I think it's an organic preparedness. I don't think we will have a problem because, as I said, our demographics are to our advantage. We have a huge workforce which is educated. We have a huge capability on technical skills. So I don't think we will lack the managerial capability to get to the transition. In fact, that's the same team of managers, corporations, administrators, regulators, establishment, which is, it's not that somebody is making us 3rd. We are ourselves organically becoming 3rd. We are going to grow. And why 3rd? We can have aspirations for even higher. So I think it is a question of adapting to a scale and adapting the ground rules, and to ensure that we must have a balance across all stakeholders to work as one country growing and prospering together. Because, as I said, only GDP does not reflect the growth of a country. GDP is just one parameter. So you will have to see at societal balance, you have to look at societal harmony, education, because what we have today as an advantage, as an asset, is because of the education system that we have. we should not destroy it. We should not get into any kind of structural changes which affects it, but we need to adapt to the new world. So I think India, with a large population, a young population, and the kind of education standards, will not be found wanting, which you are seeing in many other countries. I don't think India will have an immigration problem soon, at least not on the inward side. So I think the capability exists very clearly in this country. It is for us to leverage the full potential and do it in a manner which is harmonious.
Thank you, Saurabh, for the question. Maybe, yeah, we got last two. You send the mic, please.
Sir,
Gentleman on the, yeah.
myself Rahul Chatterjee, I am Senior Manager of WBCDCL. Sir, a very small question that we are now talking about the climatic responsibility of the organizations across the globes. So we should be responsible to the climatic conditions. Now my question is that, sir, the companies are having multiple presence across the globe. Like in Netherlands, Tata Steel and Tata Steel in Jamshedpur. The public demands of Netherlands has a AQ of 4, and we do not have any public demand, we cannot achieve up to that mark. So what should be the strategy of the company to balance this, to ethically balance this matter, that whether we should be responsible to the Indian people and we should try to decrease the AQ up to 4 level, or as per the demand of the people, we will not be responsible for that?
Good question. So I think it's important that we have that balance. Human lives are important everywhere. When we talk about an AQI of 4 or 5 in a particular place, you know very well that at that level, a human being is at no risk. Okay. Similarly, if you are, you have to define your tolerance limits, and therefore we actually work to keep decreasing our carbon footprint over the next 5 years and 10 years, and we want to be net zero by 2045. It's a very hard to abate industry, but that's reflective across the board, not because of what the society can tolerate or whether the regulations tolerate. As responsible companies and corporates, we have to move ahead, and we have to make those investments, we have to make our practices change so that there is a continuous trajectory of reduction. I think, and it is important to also mention that it's not just the company which emits, it's the entire community that emits. So we also did that study that it's not that 80% or 90% comes within the company. It is actually the reverse. The company is going down on its CO2 trajectory, but the other participants, whether it's transporters or whoever it is, there is a vehicular traffic, a lot of it, ancillary industries, other industries, because air doesn't have boundaries. It also doesn't have political boundaries, which is why it's a global problem. Okay, so therefore it has to be addressed. What we can do, we will certainly do. If everybody says the same, we will certainly be much faster in our transition as a country.
Maybe last couple of questions, yeah.
Hello. I'm Ajay Todi. I work with a company called High Tech Systems and Services. It's wonderful listening to you. My question was that, well, I come from a business family, but I've been working professionally for the last 3 decades. My dad told me that, you got into the wrong field. I don't know whether it's right or not, but it's been very satisfying. My question was that, given the cultural differences across the country and internationally, and along with that, all the changes that are happening in demographics and the way the youth behaves, the way the middle age behaves nowadays, how do you handle this aspect of cultural differences in Tata Steel?
So I think, when it's a very good question, because actually culture decides in some ways the engagement pattern with multiple stakeholders. And so when we actually expanded ourselves beyond Jamshedpur, and I can tell you within India itself, and it's a well-documented pathway. When we went to Orissa, though we were mining in Orissa for 80 years, when we got into Kalinganagar, which is where our a big plant is set up, the tribals there did not know Tata Steel. And because they were so isolated. So in that part of the state, the state government said, we will ensure that we will clear the people, etc. But it turned ugly. And we said, please stay behind. We don't need the state. We will go in ourselves. And it's important to create a sense of belonging. So what we did is we first got hold of people who speak the same language. So in Jamshedpur, we had people who used to speak the Ho language. Ho is a tribal language. And we got them as our intermediaries to talk to these people. And I personally have gone there from 2004-05 when it was very, very volatile. And we gave them a card, which was called a Tata Parivar card. Now first look at that card, they said, what am I supposed to do with this card? And it was a kind of a rejection. But when you told them that we belong to the same family as you, we are not different. We are coming here to invest in the site. We want to ensure your quality of life improves. And we are not in a hurry. We took about 6 to 7 years in engaging. We signed the MOU with the Odisha government in 2004. We started work on the plant in 2010. And this 6 years was actually a very large social rehabilitation program where you engage, and there were multiple hamlets. You know, it was not that it was just one village or one concert, because there were 4,000 families. And the typical corporation mindset is, I'll build some place for you, please go there. But they said, sorry, we don't go, and we don't stay in these places. So we had to engage with them hamlet by hamlet in a manner where it started from a hostile view to a more friendlier position. So it takes time. In fact, the first signal of them willing to talk is very unique. They actually will cut a tree in their hamlet. If the tree is cut and it falls on the ground, it will be done sometime in the night. You know there is an indication that they're willing to engage with you. So patience, organizational patience is very important. So we build hospitals for them, schools for them. We had training centers for them. We used to give them weekly rations and to get them comfortable that we are genuine and we're not in a hurry. And that patience is the reason why we have been able to make 50,000 crores investment in that site today. And if you go to that place today, you will find it's a completely reformed, because their quality of life, their economics has changed. We've actually got people who are, some of them were not interested in working in a steel plant or be contractors in steel plant. So we got them trained in the vocation that they want to be. Some of them with our colleagues in the Taj have become cooks. They are elsewhere, somewhere else they've gone. So we ran multiple vocational programs across to give them the value of life which they wanted to pursue themselves. They were not aware of this when you went in. It took us time. That's why I said we took 6 years to start the first brick on the ground. So culture is something which is, as you said, even in India we have multiple cultures. So the empathy, patience, and the determination to kind of wait it out and address the issues of what the other stakeholder wants. We can't just be driven by what we want. We are entering a new zone. So I think that's the goodwill, and once you create that, that reputational benefit far exceeds the NPV of waiting 6 years, which my analyst friends will not know or understand. But at the same time, when we signed, there are some peers who signed similar MOUs in that state, but they have not done anything. So that's because at some point it tips either down or tips up, and you have to play that patience game. It's similar in any other geography, whether it is in Europe or elsewhere. So I think culture, one of the biggest thing is to create the trust and faith. We do it even with the family, right? If somebody new comes to the family, you have to give time. You have to develop that trust and faith and confidence. So it's the same thing. Thank you.
Thank you. And just last one question, yeah. Just the last one. Really sorry for time. I have to apologize. We just take one.
ESG reporting has started by Indian stock markets. Probably they have mandated for 1,000 companies to report for that, although the reporting format has not been finalized. But it is calling for technology upgradation in the corporates. And due to this global competitive situation, how do you think that how to manage the ROI for the corporates?
So, but as I said, that if the purpose of the organization is in the right direction, this is an investment which is actually helpful to drive future business performance, especially when, as I said, when the economic cost comes in. For example, carbon gets priced. There will be a clear ROI for the ESG information, especially environmental information. So while the BRSR that the SEBI has asked the first 1,000 to take, we've been, for example, doing integrated reporting since 2015. It's a version of, the principle-based version of the BRSR, where you value the non-financial indicators or KPIs in the same way as the financial indicators. And if you are doing a review of the business, it's just not your financial outcomes, but what we are doing on non-financial outcomes, which includes the S part, the societal outcomes. And that's actually done in a manner where it's an integrated thinking. It's not just financial capital, but it's also your physical capital and your social capital that the organization is engaged with. If you're taking it together, it is a slightly long term, but it certainly will give value. And there are enough evidence to suggest the same.
Thank you. I think there was one student at the back. Maybe one question from the student would be useful, yeah. Maybe one question. I'm really sorry. There's so many hands up. Maybe one last one, yeah.
Good evening, sir. Myself, Astha Singh, and I'm from International School of Business and Media, Kolkata. As you have started the session with very beautiful line that the corporation should not focus on profit but climate. So, my question to you is, with the rising focus on sustainability, how can business effectively align ethical and environmental responsibilities with profitability, without compromising competitiveness? As it can be possible that in a same sector, there can be two different corporations. One might be profit-centric and another environment-centric. So how one should align their profitability and ethical and environmental responsibilities without compromising competitiveness?
Thank you. So I think it's not mutually exclusive. Because if you look at corporate longevity, it will have to run its business in an ethical manner. Otherwise, it will get impacted either reputationally or legally or regulatorily. So I don't think it is mutually exclusive. If you are building an institution, running an institution, and you want to give corporate longevity to that institution, the value systems and ethical standards have to continue to be strong. So I don't think if you run it ethically, you will not make money. And if you don't run it ethically, you will make money. That is not, there's no mutually exclusive kind of stuff. It's together. That's how I see it. Thank you.
Thank you. On that note, we wrap up the entire session. But quick last comments from my end. Well, you have to be a great manager, but often be a better listener. And I'm reminded of Ghalib. And Ghalib wrote this maybe a few centuries ago. He said, Zindagi var Ghalib, यही भूल करता रहा, धूल चेहरे पे थी, पर आईना साफ करता रहा. धूल चेहरे पे थी पर आईना साफ करता रहा. Be a great listener and keep reflecting back. On that note, be a good manager, be a good listener, but more importantly, be a great human being. Thank you, Mr. Koushik Chatterjee. I think we had a wonderful masterclass and we all take back so many learnings from this. Really grateful. Thank you so much.
Now I'd request the President, Mr. G.M. Kapur and Mr. T V S Shenoy, kindly felicitate our amazing keynote speaker we had this evening, Mr. Koushik Chatterjee. Please. Thank you, sirs. It was really a pleasure. Thank you so much.